Hey guys, tonight we're hiking up a moonlit hillside in Greece. Don't worry, you don't need shoes. But maybe bring your imagination and a mild tolerance for ridiculous gods. The stones are cool beneath your bare feet. The stars are mostly minding their business. And somewhere up ahead, there's a rock with a grudge and a very long memory. You're here to hear a story. Hermes' story, not the sanitized version they tell in museums. No, this is the slow-burn saga of a god who once screamed into the hills, didn't hear himself scream back, and blamed a rock. Not even a special rock, just a mildly echoey one. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing how far these stories travel, unlike Hermes, who once forgot where he left half a mountain. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're trudging uphill now. The grass whispers under your soles, dry and papery in the wind. Somewhere behind you, an owl hiccups. Somewhere in front of you, there's a hollow in the rock wall. Barely a crack. Really, but if you whisper into it, the air seems to swallow your words like soup. No bounce, no reply, no echo, just silence. Hermes stood here once, confused. You can almost see him barefoot, fidgety, eternally 17. A messenger of gods, a prankster, a boundary crosser. You'd think a being that fast wouldn't care about hearing his own voice. But this particular night, he cared. He yelled into the hillside, and when nothing came back, he took it personally. To be fair, Hermes had a reputation for talking to himself. He narrated things as he did them. I'm stealing these cows now. He once declared, "I'm inventing sandals next," he added. So when he lost his echo, it was like losing a friend. Or worse, a fan. Historians still argue whether this specific hill near Mount Kyllene was actually sacred, or if Hermes just liked the acoustics. One second-century scribe accused the hill of devouring sound like an old sponge, while another claimed that it was a portal to Hades, but only for noise. Fringe theory. Maybe, but it's on a vase somewhere, so it counts. Now, here's the weird part. That rock you're standing in front of, it's got scratch marks, deliberate ones. Someone divine, impulsive, probably wearing winged sandals once tried to carve words into it. And not just messages, sentences, entire arguments. You run your fingers across the shallow grooves. Hello, echo back. Coward. I invented liars. I deserve a reply. There's one especially frantic inscription near the bottom. It simply says, "Rock, I'm sorry." You step back. The wind picks up a little, but still no echo. It's just you and the sound of wind dodging questions. Maybe Hermes never got his echo back because, like most gods, he confused volume with vulnerability. You sit. The rock feels warm somehow, like it remembers things. You imagine Hermes flopping here, sulking with divine flair, maybe throwing pebbles at his own feet, maybe muttering that his voice had better things to do. One theory, admittedly niche, is that Hermes didn't lose his echo. It left him. Echo, the nymph, was known for copying what others said, but only after being cursed. Some scholars believe she found a loophole that she imprinted on Hermes like a chatty parrot and followed him around until she got bored, then vanished. Maybe into the wind, maybe into the rock, or maybe she just got tired of being mistaken for a natural phenomenon. Meanwhile, Hermes went around blaming topography. The wind brushes your cheek now, dry, faintly metallic, like air after lightning or poorly cleaned bronze. You swear you hear something, not a word, just the memory of one. Something like, "You left me first." But maybe that's just the hillside settling, or your own voice, curling backward in your mind. Hermes, of course, couldn't handle ambiguity. Gods are notoriously bad at maybes, so when the echo didn't bounce, he tried everything. Spells, poems, even silence. Which, for him, was like asking a hummingbird to take a nap. He also kicked the rock, repeatedly. You can still see one suspiciously foot-shaped dent. So now, here you are, sitting on a rock that may or may not be sentient, waiting to hear something that might never return. This is the kind of myth that never makes it onto marble statues. It's too awkward, too human. a god blaming geology for his emotional baggage. Still, it's comforting in a way. Even Hermes, the multitasking messenger of Olympus, once got ghosted by his own echo, and instead of admitting that maybe, just maybe, he'd talked too much, he stormed off and invented postal systems, because that's how Greek gods process feelings. Invention, denial, and passive-aggressive landscape defacement. You lean back and stare up at the stars. They blink slowly, like they're trying not to laugh. A bat flits overhead. You don't say anything aloud, but you kind of wanna just to see if the rock will answer. It doesn't, but the wind almost does. You leave the whispering rock behind and drift backward back through time, through myth, through the warm breath of olive trees and goat paths worn into the hills by gods who didn't like walking, but somehow always ended up barefoot. Now you're watching him, Hermes. Not the charming teenage version yet. We're talking day one. Infant Hermes, wrapped in a stolen tortoise shell and already scheming, born on Mount Kyllene, in a cave that still smells faintly of ambrosia and goat hair. Hermes didn't waste time. Most babies learn to wiggle, coo, or develop basic eye contact. Hermes. He invented lying before he could blink. Literally, legend says he stole Apollo's sacred cows the same day he was born. And not just stole, he reversed their hoof prints to make it look like they walked backward. That's a criminal mastermind in diapers. You're squinting now, watching him toddle around the cave, dragging cow tails behind him and giggling like he's already got a law degree. One myth even claims he built the first lyre out of a tortoise shell just to distract Apollo from the missing livestock. So yes, music appreciation in ancient Greece may have started with a crime. Historians still argue whether this early prank was proof of divine genius or a cosmic warning sign. Some say Hermes was born with fully formed adult thoughts. Others say he was just a bored celestial toddler whose pacifier had teleportation abilities. One papyrus fragment even calls him the child most likely to gaslight a thundercloud. Charming. Fringe scholars, usually the ones that wear sandals year-round, believe Hermes' intelligence was linked to the terrain of Arcadia itself. The cracked limestone and echoing caves may have amplified divine cunning. Or maybe the caves were just good at hiding stolen cows. Back in the cave, you watch Hermes fashion his infamous sandals. They're crude at first, bark straps, soft moss padding. He mumbles to himself as he ties them. Gotta go faster. Gotta look cool. Gotta not get caught. The soles leave barely a trace by design. If winged sandals are the iPhone, these are the prototyped, ugly, weirdly functional, slightly cursed. Now imagine being Maya Hermes' mom, a nymph who just wanted a peaceful mountain life and ended up raising the god equivalent of a raccoon with a chemistry set. Every time she blinked, he'd invented something new or committed a misdemeanor. In one version of the myth, Maya tried to discipline him once. Hermes responded by selling her olive oil mixed with spirit of thunder, which turned out to be just fermented goat sweat. Still, it made the other gods giggle for hours. Ancient pranks. Gloriously smelly. You crouch now beside his baby footprints, still somehow warm in the stone. Hermes moved fast, but not without leaving a mark. Literally, you trace one print with your finger and feel a tremble. Like the rock remembers his velocity. There's a tale, rarely told, where Hermes asked Echo to babysit him while Maya napped. That might explain their tangled mythology. Imagine Echo, a cursed nymph doomed to repeat everything trying to wrangle a divine toddler who didn't shut up. One screamed banana, and the other echoed it a dozen times, until even the squirrels packed up and left. No scrolls confirm this theory, of course. But it would explain why Echo later avoided hills near Mount Kyllene, and why Hermes once carved she started it into a boulder. As the sun arcs high over the mythic landscape, you start to feel the pulse of the past, the speed, the mischief, the need to be heard. Hermes didn't just want to talk, he wanted to be echoed, copied, immortalized. That's a whole different craving, not presence performance. You sit back on a rock that's shaped exactly like a toddler-sized bench. Coincidence? Maybe, but it smells faintly like lightning and mischief. Here's your quirky fringe tidbit for the section. Some rural Greek traditions once warned children not to speak to themselves in the mountains, lest the echo learn your name. Whether that was a cautionary tale or a parenting hack is still up for debate. From this spot, you can see the path Hermes used scraped into the hillside like a toddler's signature. You follow it with your eyes, it leads nowhere, then everywhere. That's how Hermes liked it. He wasn't just fast, he was omnidirectional, a god of crossroads, borderlines, thresholds, the guy who invented postal routes and then probably pranked every single one. And maybe, just maybe, the echo that vanished didn't disappear by accident. Maybe it got tired of always playing second fiddle to a toddler who invented rhythm, rhyme, and robbery in the same breath. Maybe it slipped away, waiting for the one moment he would finally listen, not talk, not joke, not race ahead, but stop. And he didn't. At least, not yet. You exhale. The hillside responds with nothing. Still no echo. Hermes may have left the cave, but he left a silence behind. A very specific kind of silence. The kind that sounds like it's still thinking. You walk further down the slope, tracing the path Hermes once stomped in frustration. The trail narrows, becomes less a road and more a suggestion, a dusty line between stones and time. Your feet crunch over dry roots. The air holds that crispy Mediterranean silence, the kind that bakes meaning into everything. And then you hear it. Not loud, not clear, but unmistakable. Your own voice. A moment delayed. Answering back. Hello? You say, hello. It says, but something's off. It doesn't sound like a perfect copy. It's faster than you were. Slightly annoyed. Like it skipped your comma on purpose. You pause. The echo pauses. You hum. It hums louder. Then nothing. Just cicadas. You try again. This is weird. You're weird. Oh, you blink. Hard. Your voice just clapped back. Now, to be clear, this isn't just poetic hallucination. Throughout ancient Greece, certain places were said to carry echoes with personalities. Specific caves, cliffsides, even wells where your words didn't just bounce back. They rearranged themselves. Historians still debate whether this was natural acoustics, supernatural interference, or simply villagers being cheeky after too much fermented honey. But here you are. Not in a cave, not beside a sacred shrine, just on the trail Hermes walked, where echoes still seem to remember his tone and maybe inherited his attitude. You try again, carefully. What is this place? Your fault? You actually laugh, which makes the echo wheeze back a laugh of its own, like it's been waiting centuries to get to this moment. And then it falls quiet. You stare at the slope, at the stones. You speak again. Are you? Echo. Silence. Then, maybe, not yes, not no, just maybe. Classic. You sit on a boulder, knees drawn up, like you're back in middle school talking to the world's shadiest answering machine. You can feel something old watching, not dangerous, not hostile, just unimpressed. It's the same energy Hermes must have faced. Not fear, not awe, just you again. There's a theory, odd, mostly whispered in 19th century wine cellars, that Echo never really left. That when she faded from her nymph body, she melted into the frequencies of human speech. That every time someone talks to themselves in a canyon or curses alone on a mountaintop, she's there, not mocking, just mirroring, testing, sometimes improving. Maybe she didn't lose her body. Maybe she upgraded. You get the feeling Hermes didn't realize that. You imagine him here, pacing, calling out, expecting a loyal little voice to bounce back like applause. But Echo was never his pet. She was a punished storyteller who adapted. She might have even liked Hermes. At first, he was clever, fast, funny, in a tragic kind of way. But if you're cursed to repeat, and he never shuts up, the charm wears thin. And one day, you don't echo him back. Not because you can't, but because you choose not to. That's where the whole myth breaks. Because gods don't expect free will from the people they never bothered to understand. There's a nearby tree-twisted pine, bark like sunburned paper. You rest your hand on it, and it feels oddly buzzy. Not electrically, just emotionally, like the tree remembers overhearing something very awkward several millennia ago. Maybe Hermes shouting apologies, maybe Echo laughing, back to the hillside. You speak again. I'm listening. The echo says nothing. You wait. I'm sorry. This time, the echo returns. Too late. Oof! Welcome to Greek mythology, where even disembodied voices hold grudges longer than marble statues do. Still, you don't get up. You sit there, let the breeze settle, let the silence stretch, and eventually, maybe 30 seconds, maybe 3 centuries later, she says something else. Try again. You don't know if that's forgiveness, or a test, or both. In the distance, a cicada gives a full-body sigh. A lizard does a push-up on a hot rock with the urgency of a bored gym teacher, and that's when you notice it. You're not hearing your voice anymore. You're hearing hers. Different pitch, different breath. Just close enough to fool the ego. Just different enough to remind you, you're not in charge here. Hermes forgot that. 2. One fringe interpretation of the myth says Hermes didn't lose Echo by accident. He designed her to talk back and didn't expect her to evolve. Like those AI assistants that start correcting your grammar, he wanted control, but Echo adapted, outgrew him. And when he finally listened, he heard her for the first time, not as a reflection, but as a story he didn't get to write. You lean your head back against the tree, close your eyes. Somewhere in the hillside, a voice hums a lullaby. It's off-key, definitely not yours, but it's still beautiful. The breeze has picked up now, whistling through the grasses in short, breathy bursts, like it's trying to tell you a secret but keeps forgetting the punchline. You rise from the boulder slowly, brush pine dust from your legs, and follow a sun-bleached path that snakes between two hills like a lazy thought. Your footsteps land in rhythm with the cicadas. Then, without warning, you're somewhere else entirely. The scene sharpens like a story you've accidentally walked into. A field, cows, Apollo's face, suspicious. Hermes' face, smug. You've landed in one of the weirder sibling rivalries in all of Greek myth. Hermes, barely out of swaddling cloth, has just stolen Apollo's cattle. And not just stolen, he's rebranded them, reversed their hooves, tied reeds to their tails, left a fake trail leading into the sea. The only thing missing was a misleading Yelp review. Apollo is not amused. He's storming through the field now, shouting celestial insults and waving his golden lyre like he might whack someone with it. Hermes, of course, is pretending to be asleep. It's the ancient divine version of "I didn't get your text." The tension crackles like old parchment. But instead of divine punishment, what happens next is weirdly musical. Hermes reaches into his bag of tricks and pulls out something new. The lyre he made from a tortoise shell. He plucks it once, just once, and the sound freezes the air. It's sweet, high, totally unexpected. A little like if a baby raccoon recited Mozart. Apollo pauses. Hermes smiles. The cows wander off, deeply unimpressed. Now, here's the historical fact buried inside this chaos. The lyre Hermes invented became one of ancient Greece's most iconic instruments. It was central to education, poetry, and therapy. Young men were expected to master it, unless they were training to throw javelins or die young. The earliest lyres were actually made from tortoise shells, animal sinew, and clever guesses. Hermes wasn't just playing music. He was hacking evolution. Historians still argue whether this moment Hermes giving the lyre to Apollo was a metaphor for art triumphing over theft or just a really effective bribe. Apollo, god of music and order, is handed a new toy by a newborn with sticky fingers and a grin too big for his tiny head. And somehow, it works. Apollo softens, not completely, but enough to stop looking for revenge and start tooting the strings. There's something else going on. Though, something Hermes doesn't realize yet. You hear it faintly now, an echo of that very moment, caught in the folds of time. A laugh, not his, a quiet, clipped mimic. Echo was there, not visible, not announced, but listening. One fringe version of the myth claims Echo followed Hermes for days after he gave away the lyre. That she was drawn not to the music, but to the silence between the notes. The stillness that finally came when Hermes stopped talking and started creating. It was the only time he didn't fill the world with words. And she remembered it. You pass a stone slab half buried in grass. Carved on it, in neat lines, is a message, probably ancient graffiti. Maybe divine sarcasm. Gave him cows. Got applause. Still no echo. You wonder if Hermes expected music to solve everything. If handing Apollo the lyre was just a distraction. But maybe he was also offering it to the hillside, to the silence, to whatever voice had been missing from his world since that first unanswered shout. You kneel near the stone and touch its warm surface. A thin fissure runs across it like the echo cracked it from the inside. The air smells of time and smoldering secrets. Above, a hawk circles once, then vanishes into the light. Somewhere, a flute tries to mimic the wind and fails badly. Then, faintly, you hear it again. Not an echo, not a bird, just one note, a lyre string, plucked by time. It's off-key. You smile. Of course it is. Echo doesn't do pitch correction. She does honesty. And in the honesty, Hermes once found something he didn't know he needed. Silence that meant something. The music fades. The cows disappear into myths. Apollo hums a tune that he won't admit Hermes gave him. And the youngest god in Olympus, trickster and messenger, walks away without saying a word. That might be the most unnatural thing he's ever done. The path splits ahead. One side winds toward a crumbled hillside shrine where wild goats nap like retired philosophers. The other dips into a shallow valley filled with strange rock formations, stacked stones that teeter just enough to make you nervous. Like they're holding ancient grudges. You take the valley route. Naturally, the cairns rise around you, dozens of them, some neat, some lopsided, a few with flat stones so thin they look like petrified pancakes. You pause beside one and squint. There's a small spiral carved into the side just once, just deep enough to catch rain or meaning. Here's your historical fact of the moment. In archaic Greece, travelers marked paths with cairns, or Herma, named after, you guessed it, Hermes. These weren't just trail signs. They were shrines, warnings, messages, offerings. Pile 3 stones and you weren't just saying, "This way," you were saying, "Hermes, guide me. Hermes, don't mess with me. Hermes, remember me." And yes, fringe archaeologists have pointed out that some cairns look suspiciously like nervous apology towers, as if someone was trying to stack enough rocks to make up for something. You kneel next to one now and brush away some dry moss. There, barely visible, is another etching. Did you hear it? I didn't. Underneath, blamed the rock. Felt better. Classic Hermes. He passed through this valley often, not because he liked it, but because it was quiet. It didn't echo. Not well. Some slopes held voices for miles. This place swallowed them, like they were snacks. Historians still debate why Hermes marked so many of these stone towers here. One theory, he tried to build his own echo. Like a bad podcast studio made of regret. He'd climb to the center, shout something clever, and wait. But the stones just sat there, unmoved. Unimpressed. Maybe that's why he kept piling them. If the sound wouldn't bounce, maybe the effort would. You touch one of the cairns gently. It's warm in the sun, cool. Underneath, there's a balance here. Chaotic, lazy, stubborn, very Hermes. Then you spot something odd. Tucked behind a wider tower is a much smaller stack, just 2 rocks. On top, balanced precariously, is a feather. Owl. Clean, untouched by wind. You step closer. The feather flutters once, then stills. And from somewhere behind the rocks, you hear a faint whisper. Why do you want to hear yourself? It isn't your voice. It isn't Hermes either. It's hers. Echo. You sit down, suddenly aware that the entire valley is listening. Not to answer, just to wait. She has that kind of patience now. You whisper, "I just want to know I'm real." A long pause. Then, from another cairn, "You are." That's the problem. Oof. Echo doesn't pull punches. You respect that. You think about Hermes, so desperate to be heard, he mistook silence for insult. So used to tricking people, he assumed his own reflection should obey. But silence doesn't obey. It holds its ground. And sometimes, it evolves, like Echo did. There's a moment documented only in a lost papyrus fragment burned in Alexandria, where Hermes allegedly tried to apologize to Echo by inventing the world's first sorry song. Scholars say it involved panpipes, goat bell percussion, and a truly humiliating interpretive dance. It did not work. He left behind a rock with 3 words scratched into it. You win, voice. That rock's not here. But you suspect these cairns are what came after. Stacked confessions, bad metaphors, spatial poems. Maybe Hermes figured if Echo wouldn't answer, the stones would. And if they wouldn't answer, maybe he didn't deserve one. You glance up. The wind moves now, not fast, but deliberately, like a cat stretching on tile. You exhale and speak again. Okay, don't echo. Just listen. And she does. Or maybe you do. Same difference. The cairns are still. The sun leans lower. A single pebble falls from the smallest stack and lands on your shoe. Lightly. A punctuation mark. You don't move. Just smile. Hermes once blamed a rock for his missing echo. You're starting to think the rock was never the problem. The valley fades behind you as you follow a trail that slopes upward, winding through thorny brush and clusters of bitter herbs. The scent of wild oregano sticks to your fingers when you brush past. Every step feels like you're climbing, not just a hill, but into the raw undercurrent of something older than myth, older than Hermes. Even the wind returns, softer this time, not whispering, not answering, just being there. And then you hear her again. Echo. But not like before. Not snarky. Not clipped. Her voice now sounds tired, slippery, like it's sliding between dimensions. It speaks not from one spot, but many scattered in the air like the glint of morning dew. I wasn't always this. The words aren't yours. Not a reflection. Just truth. Hanging loose in the atmosphere. You crest the hill and find a wide hollow nestled between two jagged ridgelines. It's sheltered, quiet in a padded way. Sound doesn't bounce here. It drifts and settles like dandelion fluff. And there, sitting on a fallen log made silver by time, is Echo. Sort of. You don't see her not clearly, but you sense her. The way you sense someone standing behind you when your back prickles, a shimmer in the air. A density where there should be none. She speaks again, and this time you feel it in your chest. They named me wrong. You sit. Slowly, the log creaks under your weight, which she finds funny. Her laugh comes out like two flutes playing at once, unsure if they're in the same key. Here's your historical fact. Echo was a mountain nymph, or Oread, originally tied to Hera's court, cursed by the goddess to only repeat the words of others after covering for Zeus one too many times. Typical divine drama. But long before her myth was written in marble and scroll, Echo was part of ancient oral storytelling rituals. She was the soundproofing of sacred groves, the breath between syllables in ritual chants. She was the pause, the waiting, the unspoken yes, and then she was cursed. Do you know what it's like? Her voice hums. To only say what others say. To lose the ability to begin. You nod. Though you're not sure she's watching. Now, for your fringe tidbit. One forgotten cult in Boeotia believed Echo could be summoned not with speech, but with silence. Total silence. 10 minutes of it. They'd sit in stone circles and simply not talk, waiting for Echo to arrive. Sometimes they claimed she did, other times, just bees. Depends on the season. But Hermes didn't know silence. He only knew sound. He filled every space with it. Words, songs, jokes, schemes, footfalls. So when Echo refused to bounce his voice back, he panicked. He thought something broke. He blamed a rock, and, for a while, the myth says he stopped going up hills. You ask her, softly, did you like him? She replies faster than you expect. Yes. At first, there's a breeze, like a sigh across 100 pine needles. Then she adds, he didn't know I was real, just a trick of the air. You close your eyes and listen. There's a faint memory here, a trace burned into the air like wood smoke. Hermes and Echo once met in a cave shaped like a question mark. He spoke for hours. She echoed, less and less, until she stopped entirely. And he didn't notice for 3 whole minutes. So, she left. That part isn't in the canonical myths, but it lives here in the hollow, in the air, in you now. She circles you now like a thought you can't shake. I didn't leave. I changed. Then, like an afterthought, you all do. You lean back against the log. The sky above you is that perfect, dull blue you only get in stories with no ending. You don't ask for more. She's not a radio. She's not Alexa. She's the breath between mistakes. Silence settles again, but now it's thick with company. You don't feel alone. You feel heard. And that's something Hermes never learned. Because when he finally stopped talking, it was too late. Echo was no longer a voice to reflect him. She was her own sound, her own rhythm. She had moved on, fractured across every mountain slope and subway tunnel where people talk just to hear themselves. She's in all of them, just listening, just waiting. And maybe, sometimes, answering. You look to your left. One of the rocks is vibrating slightly, not shaking, not cracking, just humming, not sound. Vibration, like a bone-deep version of memory. You whisper, "I'm sorry she forgot you." The rock responds, not with words, but with a low, sustained breath of wind that moves around you like a blanket being laid over your shoulders. You stay there a long time. Echo doesn't speak again. She doesn't have to. You're descending now, not because the story is finished, but because Hermes never stayed in one place for long. Even when something cracked open in his chest, he had to keep moving. That was his curse. In a way, eternal momentum. The inability to sit with his own silence for more than a breath. The path cuts sharply through a grove of myrtle and laurel. You catch the scent of something sweet and bitter, like an argument that almost became a poem. The ground crunches beneath your feet. Pine needles, old stones, half a lyre string snagged on a root. Ahead, there's a small clearing shaped like a shallow bowl. At its center stands Hermes again, frozen in memory. Not as a boy, not as the schemer. This version of him is tired, a little slumped, like someone who's trying really hard not to pace. You don't walk forward, you just observe. He's attempting stillness, trying not to speak, and it's clearly killing him. His mouth twitches. His fingers drum against his thigh. Every so often, he hums something under his breath, then immediately bites it back, like he's afraid the trees will judge his melody. This is the section of the myth they rarely teach. The part where Hermes tried silence, not as a trick, not as a trap, but as a kind of penance. See, after Echo vanished, after she refused to mimic him anymore, Hermes got desperate. Not noisy, desperate. He visited oracles, threw bones, asked frogs for advice. They were surprisingly unhelpful. Eventually, he was told something simple: to hear her, you must match her. So he stopped talking. Historians still argue whether this retreat into silence lasted a day, a week, or a century. Some claim he wandered the mountains like a mute shadow, refusing even to whistle. Others say he buried his own voice inside a tree stump and only whispered to moss. And yet, the silence didn't bring Echo back. That's the cruel lesson. Silence isn't always an invitation. Sometimes it's just quiet. He sits now on a flat stone that bears his symbol caduceus carved lazily, like someone scratched it in while fidgeting. You sit across from him, in the version of time that lets memory and presence overlap. You don't speak. He doesn't look at you. But in this strange shared silence, you notice something wild. He hears everything now. A bee buzzing half a field away, a leaf turning over in the breeze, the pulse of your own blood in your neck, and somewhere far, far off, a faint, echoey laugh that doesn't belong to him. Fringe mythologists, usually the kind with too many cats, claim Hermes developed a condition they call echosensitivity. It's not real, but it should be. They say he began to notice mimics everywhere. Birds, drips of water, the way his own footsteps sometimes seem to hesitate behind him. One obscure theory even suggests he invented ASMR during this period. He just didn't market it well. Typical. You watch him now as he raises one hand and tries to wave at the air. It's awkward, hesitant, not his usual flourish, just a greeting, no performance. He whispers, "Okay, I'm listening." The trees shiver. A pine cone falls dramatically nearby, but no reply. He tries again. "I won't speak, just stay." A breeze slips through your sleeve. It's not an answer, not quite, but it feels like company. The funny thing is, you don't even know what he wants anymore. The echo, the apology, the closure. Maybe what Hermes really lost was the illusion that everything would answer him back. Maybe this whole story isn't about a rock, or a prank, or even Echo herself. Maybe it's about learning that some silences are sacred, and you don't get to break them just because you're uncomfortable. You close your eyes, you match his breathing, slow, uneven, full of 1,000 words that never made it out. Then you both sit there, not performing, not waiting, just being. And for once in all his many tangled lives, Hermes doesn't speak, neither do you. And somewhere, out beyond the treetops, Echo finally pauses too, because sometimes, just sometimes, matching silence is enough. You wake up, or maybe you never slept and find yourself in a different kind of space. Still outdoors, still under the lazy arc of the sky, but something here feels too still. The trees don't rustle, the wind holds its breath. Even the sunlight seems muted, like it's walking on tiptoes. There's a rock in front of you, large, unmoving, no carvings, no mythic glow, just a big, boring hunk of ancient stone, except it's been marked. just once. One long, smooth chisel stroke across the middle, so deliberate it might as well be a sigh in physical form. You circle it slowly. From behind, you see the words, "A rock named Sorry." That's the name Hermes gave it, or so they say. One fringe theory credited to a philosopher who mostly worked from wine-soaked scrolls suggests that Hermes once tried to trap his guilt inside this stone, that he carved it into something sacred, hoping it would echo for him when nothing else would. You tap the surface gently. It hums, but not like an instrument, more like something deeply unimpressed. This is the myth's quiet middle chapter, the part where Hermes, unable to hear echo, blames the only thing that stayed. The rock, he blamed it for being too dense, too literal, too unmagical. He called it names, kicked it, whispered to it like a lover, waited for it to say his name back. It never did. Historians still debate what kind of rock it was. Basalt, marble. Some even say it was meteoric fallen from the stars, to remind Hermes that not all things orbit him, that some things just fall and land and stay. This was not a fancy altar or a divine monument, just a rock. But Hermes kept returning to it, not with hope, with practice. You can picture him here drawing symbols in the dirt, circling the stone like a failed magician, trying every tone and volume, whispering his most carefully rehearsed confessions into the grain, sometimes shouting, sometimes singing. Once, reportedly, he tried apologizing in 5 languages: Ancient Greek, Thracian, dolphin clicks, goat speak, and something only owls understood. The rock didn't flinch. Eventually, he carved into it. If this stone ever speaks, let it lie. You sit down beside it, pressing your back to its side. It's warm, despite the breeze, and oddly comforting, like a pet that doesn't need to understand you to keep you company. And that might have been the point. Maybe the rock wasn't for echo, maybe it was for Hermes himself, a way to name his failure, to see it, to give it form, because gods don't carry guilt well. They externalize it. Blame weather, blame fate, blame rocks. And this one was a good listener. You trace the chisel line again, then feel around the edges. At the base, barely visible, are 3 smaller words, carved in a rushed, childlike script. Echo deserved better. It hits different. This wasn't the flashy Hermes. This wasn't the prankster, the inventor, the charming voice in your left ear while your right ear caught fire. This was the Hermes who didn't know how to undo a mistake. And instead of pretending it never happened, he named it Sorry. You hear a rustle behind you, but when you turn, there's nothing, just the air. And yet, something feels different. The air's warmer now, lighter, and a breeze curls around the rock and whispers, very softly, not too late. You blink, but you don't answer. You just sit there, smiling a little, because you get it now. Hermes never needed echo to echo him. He just needed someone or something that let him say the truth without asking for applause. You lean your head against the stone. It doesn't answer, but it stays. And that, finally, is enough. The rock fades behind you as you rise, not because you're done with it, but because it doesn't need you to stay. It wasn't a shrine. It was a mirror, a weight, a name. You walk now toward a low ridge, dusted with crushed lavender. The scent follows you, sleepy and sharp, like a memory you forgot you needed. And then, just over the crest of the hill, you see it, a building, or what's left of one. It's half a ruin, half a joke, columns made of wood, roof made of reeds, front steps littered with bird droppings and old goat bones. But the painted sign hanging crookedly from a rusted nail is clear. Oracle answers by sound only. You're not sure what that means. Probably no one. But the door is ajar, and you're already walking toward it before your better instincts catch up. Inside, it's dim. The air is heavy with frankincense and mildew. The walls are covered in strange symbols, dots, dashes, sound waves drawn in ochre. You sit on a mat woven from reeds and goat hair. It smells faintly of storytelling and regret. From the shadows, a voice croaks. Ask your question, then wait. You freeze. It's not the dramatic moment you expected. The oracle sounds like someone's great-aunt with a bad head cold. Still, you play along. You ask softly, why did the echo vanish? Nothing. Then not yours. The oracle hiccups, loudly. Then a long pause. Then a weird, bird-like chirp. You stare, uncertain. She mutters, the gods are busy. You get what you get. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In some regions of ancient Greece, oracles did not deliver messages in coherent speech. Instead, they'd twitch, groan, stutter, or mimic bird calls. Attendants called therapontes were responsible for interpreting the nonsense. Whole sacred careers were built around decoding sneezes. You hear another sound, this time a burp, long, slightly smug. The oracle nods solemnly. That means because she wanted to. You blink. Burp equals autonomy. Apparently, one theory from fringe mythology suggests that Echo didn't disappear because of a curse. She chose the curse because it meant she could finally avoid conversations she didn't want to have. Think of it as divine boundary setting disguised as mythic punishment. Hermes, of course, hated that. He wasn't used to know. You try another question. What did Hermes do wrong? This time the oracle doesn't answer, but a sound emerges from the room itself, a low creak, like wood bending under a heavy memory. Then, he thought she was his. You swallow. That one doesn't need translation. You lean back, suddenly aware of how loud your own breathing feels here. The oracle leans forward slightly, just enough for you to see her face in the shadows. She's older than stone, wrinkled like mountain leather, but her eyes flicker with mischief. You get the sense that she might have been Echo once, or is still Echo, or knows her real name. Echo isn't an answer, she says. She's a choice. You nod slowly. You're starting to understand. The oracle waves you off, mumbling about beetles and throat lozenges. You step back into the sun, and now the sound around you has changed. Not louder, just braver. A bee hums with conviction. A lizard scuttles like it's telling a joke to the ground. Even your footsteps sound different, more sure, less needy. You're not waiting to be reflected anymore. You're walking forward. In the distance, a reed pipe starts playing. Not expertly, just earnestly. You smile. Hermes might be nearby, still wandering, still learning, and maybe, this time, listening better. The music gets louder as you walk, not because you're getting closer, but because the wind has decided it's in the mood for chaos again. It carries the melody in pieces. First, the low drone of a panpipe, then a high, off-key whistle, and then, unmistakably, a very annoyed shout. You round the next hill, and there it is, a full-blown meltdown. Hermes stands in the middle of a rocky clearing, arms flailing, hair tousled, wings on his sandals flickering like candle flames in a thunderstorm. Around him, papers swirl scrolls, maps, maybe song lyrics, maybe angry poems. The source of his rage. The wind. It keeps blowing his notes away. Pan, he yells. Tell your dumb wind to chill. No reply. You look around and spot Pan, or at least a disheveled figure that looks like he's been napping inside a tree for 2 months. Curly beard, half a flute, and the general demeanor of someone who only wakes up to defend the concept of naps. He shrugs. Wind's got feelings too. Hermes groans, collapsing into a dramatically defeated sprawl on the grass. You approach quietly. He doesn't notice at first. He's too busy trying to yell into a nearby cave and getting no reply. Hello, he shouts. The echo is delayed, then warped. Hello, hello, lo, lo. No, oh. Bro, oh. Hermes freezes. Did that cave just call me bro? Pan snorts. Might be the cave. Might be your own ego bouncing back. Here's your historical tidbit. In ancient Greece, caves were often used as sacred spaces for oracles, rituals, or isolation, but they were also known for strange acoustic effects. Certain formations naturally warped echoes. Some caves extended them, others swallowed them entirely. The most famous, like the Cave of Trophonius, were said to induce prophetic visions or psychotic breaks. Historians still argue which was more likely. Hermes tosses a rock into the cave. It rolls, then stops. No echo. He frowns. I need her to answer, he mutters. Pan raises an eyebrow. You sure? Or do you just want to win? Hermes doesn't answer. You sit on a boulder nearby. The wind, to its credit, softens a little like it knows things are delicate now. Hermes pulls out a folded parchment from his sleeve. On it, a list, scribbled in gold ink, smudged with fingerprints. Things I tried to get my echo back. Lyre remix failed. Goat choir terrifying. Asking nicely. Nope. Whispering secrets. She whispered better ones back. crying into a cave. Cave wept too. Unhelpful. He sighs and folds it up again. Pan wanders over, chewing a wild fennel stalk. You ever try not trying? Hermes blinks. What kind of goat logic is that? Pan chuckles. You chased a voice so hard it stopped wanting to be one. There's a silence. Then Hermes turns to you. He looks younger, not in age, but in uncertainty. What do you think? He asks. Was she ever really there? Or did I make her up? You answer the only way you can. She was there. She just got tired of being your mirror. Hermes flinches like that hit something he'd been avoiding. Another gust of wind rolls through. This time, instead of tearing things apart, it carries something gentle. A sound, a single note from a panpipe, not from Pan, who is now asleep again on a rock, but from somewhere else. Higher, older, softer. It floats into the cave, lingers a moment, then returns. Warped but recognizable, not as an echo, as a harmony. Hermes sits up. She's not repeating me, he whispers. No, you say. She's answering. And for the first time all day, he doesn't speak. He just listens. The cave breathes. The wind hums. An echo who never truly left adds her voice not behind his. But beside it, it's not the duet he expected. It's better. The sun tilts westward now, casting long blue shadows that drape over the hills like forgotten hymns. Hermes walks beside you, quiet for once. No commentary, no muttering, not even a sly aside. Just soft sandals over dirt, wings at rest. You're not headed anywhere obvious, just following a path the wind seems to favor. The world here is different, still Greek, yes, but it hums with a different frequency, softer. You realize it when you spot a stream ahead barely wider than a ribbon, winding through pale reeds and wild mint. The surface ripples oddly, like it's listening more than flowing. Hermes pauses. This is the place, he says, almost sheepish. You tilt your head. The place. He nods. Where echo stopped being a sound. You kneel beside the water. It doesn't gurgle like most streams. It murmurs. Not words. Not reflections. Just murmur. Almost like it's composing itself. Here's the history tucked into the myth. In some of the lesser-known versions, echo didn't just fade into air, she transformed. Some said into rock, others into voice. But one poetic variant whispered through Thessalian hill towns claimed she became a stream, one that carried voice not backward, but forward, not repeating, but reshaping. Depending on which version you believe, Hermes says quietly, she either dissolved, evolved, or just moved where I couldn't chase her. You both watch the stream. A single dragonfly hovers above it, pauses, then zips away like it overheard something it wasn't meant to. Do you still try to talk to her? You ask. Hermes shrugs. Sometimes, usually ends in me talking to myself. You offer him a pebble, smooth, flat, skipping shape. He tosses it. 3 skips. Then it disappears beneath the whispering surface. A second later, you hear a small ripple of laughter. Not his, not yours. Echo, not echoing. Just present. Still mad at me. Hermes mutters, but his smile gives him away. He sits down, cross-legged like a bored teenager pretending not to care, and begins to trace circles in the dirt with a reed. You know, I thought if I chased her long enough, I could corner her back into being what I wanted, he admits. Something predictable, repeatable, mine. You don't say anything. He's already learning. Turns out, he adds, some voices aren't meant to come back. They're meant to move on. A breeze lifts a curl of his hair. The stream answers with a faint glug like it's swallowing a story. Fringe scholars have taken this specific stream very seriously. One even claimed echo encoded new meaning into the burble's hidden phonemes only cicadas can interpret. Another insists the stream changes direction slightly when you say the truth aloud. So you test it. You say, she deserved more than mimicry. The water curves, just slightly, but enough. Hermes sees it too. He leans forward and whispers something into the reeds. You don't catch it, but the wind does. And the stream carries it not back to him, not to you, but through. There's no echo, but there is resonance. You dip your fingers into the water. It's warmer than expected, tinged with iron and lavender. You swear you feel a heartbeat not yours, not his, just ancient. Think she forgives you. You ask? Hermes shakes his head. I don't think she needs to. You both sit there a while. The sky bruises slowly toward dusk. Birds call out names you've never heard before, and the hills seem to lean in, eavesdropping. This place holds no monument, no shrine, no altar, just a stream that listens forward, and a god who finally knows how to stop talking. You leave the stream behind slowly, as if stepping out of a shared breath. Hermes lingers for a moment longer, trailing a finger through the current before letting it go. Then he's beside you again, quiet, sandals brushing dust from the path as the trail bends inland toward stranger terrain. The wind has shifted again. Not wild this time, not mischievous, just curious. It nudges you forward, like an idea you weren't ready to admit. The path leads you to a clearing dotted with small, strange objects. Boxes, stone ones, some carved, some stacked, some half sunk into the earth. Most have lids, though a few are left open, revealing nothing but dust, tiny bird bones, and in one case, an acorn tucked beside a dried-out olive pit. Hermes stops abruptly. "Oh, right, I built these." You raise an eyebrow. He waves a hand sheepishly. "Look, I was trying things." You walk to the nearest box. It's squat, weathered, carved with Hermes' symbols, the winged shoes, the snake-twined staff, and, oddly, an ear. "What are they?" You ask. "Mailboxes," he replies. You blink. "For echo," he adds quickly. "Well, sort of." You kneel, opening the lid. Inside is a rolled piece of bark, etched in clumsy lines. "Did you hear me whisper by the cave?" You open another. "I waited before I ran this time." And another. "You weren't just a voice." I know that now. The boxes go on for ages. Some are recent. Some nearly turn to mulch. One contains a pressed poppy. Another, a piece of broken flute. All of them addressed not to Olympus, not to the gods, but to someone who might never answer. After she stopped replying, Hermes says, "I thought maybe if I built something meant for one-way messages, she might choose to listen." Here's your historical fact. The earliest Greek postal systems involved messengers called hemerodromoi, or day-runners. Hermes, naturally, was their patron. But he also became god of boundaries, literal and emotional, deliverer of words. Yes, but also guardian of the space between sender and receiver. You tap one box gently. It hums faintly, like the stones remember being spoken to. I figured if she ever wanted to speak again, Hermes says, she'd pick a box. You smile at the absurdity and the devotion. This isn't performance. It's confession through architecture. And here's your fringe tidbit. There's a rural belief, preserved only in a few old Arcadian songs, that Echo does reply once per century by planting a single word in one of these boxes, but the word is always illegible. Melted ink, crushed letters, a syllable with no vowels. As if Echo has learned the power of partial silence. You ask Hermes, "Have you ever found a reply?" He shrugs. "Maybe, but I stopped looking for one specific voice. I just started writing." You open one last box. Inside, scrawled in a shaky gold line, "I don't need her to answer. I just need her to know I would've. If I'd known how." It's the truest thing you've read all day. The wind picks up a little, shuffles the boxes like leaves. Not violently, just playfully. You sit in the center of the clearing now, surrounded by these strange stone apologies. None of them ask for forgiveness. All of them leave room for it. Hermes sits beside you, quiet again, and then you hear it. Not an echo, not a voice, but a note. Low, clear, rising from the mouth of one of the open boxes. A response. Maybe, or maybe just a breeze passing through in the right shape at the right time. Either way, you don't need to chase it. You just listen. Evening folds across the hills like a deep exhale. The boxes behind you settle, each one a sleeping monument to Hermes' slow-growing conscience. You keep walking, and the path turns rocky again, snaking upward toward the ridgeline. The stones beneath your feet are older now, slick with age, marked by goat hooves, and strangely warm, as if the sun forgot to leave. Hermes walks ahead, sandals scuffing slightly, staff swinging low. There's a weight to him now, not exhaustion, just awareness, the kind that creeps in when you've stopped pretending it was someone else's fault. You reach a plateau just before nightfall, and there, under a crescent moon already tilting towards sleep, is the most ridiculous thing you've seen all day. A podium, not grand, not divine, just a very confused podium built from stacked crates, amphorae, and what looks suspiciously like an old goat trough. Atop it, a single scroll, tied in silver twine. Hermes clears his throat. "Welcome," he says, mock formal, "to the debate club of Mount Kylene." You blink. There was a debate club. He nods solemnly. Still is. Technically, you glance around. There are no seats, just a few scattered logs and, leaning against a tree, a very confused goat. "I convened it centuries ago," Hermes explains. "Open forum. No invitation required. Agenda. Can rocks remember things?" You pause. "That's it." He shrugs. "Well, and whether echoes are sentient, but that always leads to fighting. Here's your historical fact. Ancient Greeks held symposia gatherings that mixed drinking, music, and philosophy. While those took place indoors, open-air assemblies for philosophical or theological debate were common in rural communities. But Hermes's debate club was more unstructured, less Plato. More Plato if he were drunk and arguing with his reflection. You sit on one of the logs. Across from you, a satyr materializes out of the brush, dragging a jug of wine. Beside him, a very elderly shepherd settles into the grass. A tiny owl lands on the podium, blinks twice, then joins the silence. "We're here," Hermes announces to no one in particular, to determine if Echo's silence means she forgot or remembered too much. A silence follows. Then the satyr raises a hand. "Define silence." The shepherd mutters, "Define memory." The goat bleats once and sits like it plans to be here all night. Hermes paces. You raise your voice, gently. "Doesn't silence mean memory sometimes?" The owl swivels its head toward you. A breeze flutters through the clearing. Hermes stops pacing. "Explain?" You speak slowly now. "If you remember something too well, maybe you don't speak it. Not because it's gone, but because it's too present. Too heavy." The satyr burps. The owl nods. Somehow, both gestures feel approving. "Then maybe," Hermes says softly, "Echo didn't vanish. Maybe she just knew I wasn't ready to hear the truth." You nod. "And now, I'm still terrible at listening," he admits, "but I'm trying. Here's your fringe tidbit for the evening." One nearly erased myth fragment suggests that Echo didn't lose her body. She simply outgrew it, became too vast for flesh, became memory itself. And that when people repeat things, stories, jokes, names, they're not echoing one another. They're borrowing her. So maybe she is still speaking, just not all at once. Not always to Hermes. The wind rises again, threading through the amphorae and troughs, producing a strange, flute-like chord. The debate club looks up. The scroll on the podium flutters open. No words inside, just an empty sheet. Blank, like an invitation. Hermes smiles. Guess she's saying, "Your turn." You look around the clearing logs, goat, owl, absurd podium, and realize this isn't about answers. It never was. It's about showing up, about saying things that might never bounce back, about listening anyway. You lean back, letting the night fold over you. The breeze carries the owl's wings into the dark. The goat curls up beside the satyr. The shepherd mumbles a prayer to no one. And for the first time in this long, wandering myth, Hermes sits, not to explain, not to perform, but to be part of the silence. The stars come out slowly, reluctant and drowsy. No grand entrance, just the quiet appearance of old light pretending to be new. You and Hermes stay where you are at the top of this absurd hill, surrounded by goat philosophers and invisible arguments that no longer need to be won. The podium still stands, though the wind has tilted it slightly, giving it the proud lean of a chair that's been sat on too many times. Hermes is humming again, but it's different now. No rhythm, no melody, just breath, pushed through his teeth like he's relearning how sound works. You glance sideways at him. Do you ever forget on purpose? He doesn't flinch, just shrugs. All the time. You wait. He adds, "When you remember too much, it slows you down. And I'm not built for that. Never have been." There's a rustle behind you. A satchel. His. He pulls from it a crumpled scroll and unrolls it without care. Across it are hundreds of tiny drawings maps, symbols, spirals, footpaths leading nowhere. In the center, a single word, inked over and over. Echo. Some versions are capitalized. Some are curled like vines. One is written backward. A few are crossed out. One is encased in a little cartoon heart. It's a mess. I rewrote her name until it stopped meaning anything. Hermes murmurs, until I could forget what it sounded like. You nod slowly. And did it work? Almost, he whispers, but not quite. Because here's what happens when you forget on purpose. It leaks. It drips out when the world's too quiet, or when someone walks with your rhythm, or when a mountain doesn't answer back the way it used to. The truth finds cracks. One fringe account from a Hellenistic scroll suggests that Hermes invented mnemonic devices not to remember facts but to forget feelings. That every knot, every encoded phrase, was a way of telling his own mind, this part is safe to bury. And yet, nothing stays buried forever. You stare out into the dark valley. Fireflies blink in slow Morse code. Somewhere far below, a wolf barks once and then gives up. Like it forgot why it was angry. You whisper, "Do you want her back?" Hermes doesn't answer immediately. Then, finally, he says, "Not if it means I'd undo what she became." And that's it, isn't it? He doesn't miss the voice. He misses the chance. You lie back now, watching the stars rearrange themselves. You think of the rock named Sorry, the echo boxes, the stream that carries words forward, not back. Each was a version of Hermes trying not to remember, until he couldn't ignore what forgetting had cost. He speaks again, softer than before. I rehearsed whole apologies in my head. Perfect ones, musical ones, but none of them matched what she needed. You ask, and what did she need? He stares upward, a world without me in the center. There it is, not guilt, not grief, perspective. Here's your final quirky tidbit of the section. There's a temple ruin in central Arcadia where a statue of Hermes once stood. Not holding his usual caduceus, but a mirror. The inscription below read, "He who forgets himself hears everything. No one knows who built it. It's gone now, eaten by moss and time." But maybe, just maybe, that statue was for Echo, not to reflect him, but to show him what he'd missed. The podium groans as it finally topples in the wind. Neither of you flinch. Hermes folds the scroll, places it beside him like a tired child, and closes his eyes. He doesn't need her to speak anymore. He just needs to remember who he became when she stopped. Night has taken full hold now. The stars have settled into their patient places, and the moon has softened into a sideways smile more amused than watchful. You and Hermes haven't moved much. There's nothing more to chase. No riddle left to unravel. And somehow, that feels like the ending he never realized he needed. But there's still one last place to go. He rises slowly, brushing dust from his cloak, and motions for you to follow. No words, just movement. The kind that means, this isn't for answers anymore. This is for peace. The path is narrow, winding through olive trees whose trunks twist like dancers mid-thought. The silence here is thicker, more whole. It doesn't ache. It holds you, gently, like a quilt sewn from forgotten lullabies. You arrive at a hollow in the rock wall, framed by ivy and worn carvings. Hermes steps aside to let you enter first. You duck inside. It's not a cave, not really. More of an alcove. The walls are covered in handprints, hundreds of them, fading into stone. Big hands, small ones. Some drawn with gold dust, others just smudged with ash. Hermes steps in behind you. I used to think if I left enough of myself behind, he says softly, something would echo back. You don't reply. Instead, you raise your own hand and press it to the stone. The rock is cool, but not empty. It holds stories, not in words, not in sound. In shape, in presence. This isn't where Echo died, or vanished, or melted into metaphor. This is where she chose to stop bouncing back, where she stopped being a function and became a figure not seen, not heard, but felt. You speak now, barely above breath. She chose silence. Hermes closes his eyes, and I finally heard it. That's it. That's the full arc. Not a god getting what he wanted, but a god learning what he never deserved to demand. Here's the last historical thread. In some early hymns to Hermes, silence was listed as one of his domains, not because he embodied it, but because he was the only god who had to learn it. Echo was his teacher. She never charged tuition. The wind moves outside, not harsh, just patient. You and Hermes step back out beneath the stars. The sky is wider now, the night deeper. Neither of you speak. There's no need, because sometimes, when a god finally stops performing, the world answers with a whisper, or a hush, or, if you're lucky, A harmony that doesn't need to repeat. The wind softens now, rolling over the hillside like a lullaby without a tune. The stars blink slower. The trees sway, not in rhythm, but in agreement. And all around you, the silence settles into something warm, something whole. You're still with Hermes, but now he doesn't need an audience. The wings on his sandals rest, his breath is steady, and the weight he's carried for centuries of echoes unanswered, of guilt unnamed, of questions spoken too loudly is finally easing. You walk together a little longer, through olive groves that remember myths even after the mouths that told them forget. The world here doesn't echo. It absorbs, not to erase, just to hold. The night doesn't need you to understand it. It only asks that you feel it. A single owl calls in the distance. Then silence. Not empty, just full in a different way. You lie back in the grass. You close your eyes. The hillside is cool beneath you. The air smells of time and old stories, and the wind moves like it's tucking you in. No more questions. No more chasing. Just the hum of things being exactly as they are. And somewhere, out there, echo lingers. Not repeating you, but maybe watching, maybe resting, maybe just being. Sleep comes slow. Then all at once. You don't need to hear your voice to know it still exists. You don't need a reply to know you were heard. You're here. You're safe. You can let go.